Okay, Mr. Watson here, and in this video, we're going to be covering the Olympic Games as a social force. So, this is the start of the Olympic Games section for CIEA level. It's actually been a long time um, since I've made a video, so we're going to start with the first part of the syllabus as a social force, and we're looking at how this international competition, sports competition, can act as a social force. But first of all, I want to start you off with some history. Okay, so what is a social force? The idea that the Olympic Games can be used to combat a range of social issues around the world. So this big ideal that the Olympic Games is going to bring in peace and harmony and solve things. Okay, so here we have Pierre de Coubertin, a French baron. Okay, he's an aristocrat from money, uh, and he was the founder of the modern Olympic Games. So it was his idea to bring back what we had in ancient times, but with some changes. So the modern Olympic Games, a multi-sport event to take place every fourth year, and that 4 years alone does link back to the ancient Olympic Games. 4 years being known as an Olympiad, that difference between the games. But we actually have the ancient Olympic Games in its own section, so we'll wait for that. And here are some of the original aims of the modern Olympics. So what Pierre de Coubertin wanted, he wanted fair and healthy competition between the athletes, okay? Harmony between people and nations, okay, bringing them together. Moral development, so celebrating other cultures and be more diverse in your thoughts, okay? And world peace, okay, to stop conflicts that's been happening. So quite bold aims to think that a sports competition would sort all of this out, okay? But let's just take a look at where he got the idea from. Where was his inspiration in order to start these modern Olympic Games? So there was the Franco-Prussian War, and France lost this. And this was one of his original motives. He felt like the ones in combat weren't strong enough, if you like, and they'd been shamed, and they were looking to restore some of that vigor. So he wanted to re-establish national pride through physical education, becoming stronger, faster, etc. So this was the whole idea originally, restoring some pride. He then visited England, where he went to visit some English public schools, okay? And he witnessed the priority given to sport. So these schools are famous, for being known for rugby or being known for rowing, etc. And by going to these schools and seeing the priority and the importance sport holds, he noted that moral discipline was happening there, and this could be developed through team games. There was then the impact of the Much Wenlock Games. Now, also in the UK, this was a multi-sports event, but it had an underlying purpose, a bit like the underlying aims of the Olympic game, to promote the moral, physical, and intellectual improvement of the town. So they were trying to display how much this town is progressing, and they did that in the form of a multi-sports event. Okay, so again, another idea in order to start this. And then finally, obviously, the ancient Olympic Games, which I've said we'll cover in another video. But obviously, this inspired to start the modern Olympic Games. So this is the main reasons where he got his idea from. Okay, and then he went on to start the modern Olympic Games in 1896. So what I'm going to do here is very quickly, I'll try not to take too long, is just give you a couple of ideas about how the Olympics did start. Okay, so Athens 1896, this was the first staging of the modern Olympic Games. It went back to where it started in Greece. However, only 12 countries attended, and 241 exclusively male athletes participated. So while it was great that it had started, it didn't come without its problems. As we can see, Greece fielded most of the athletes. Okay, so it was very disproportional in terms of who was there. Um, Germany were persuaded to attend, and then after attending, they complained they weren't treated fairly, and then there were no women. Okay, so while we're trying to look for world peace, harmony, limit discrimination, moral development, de Coubertin did not provide any events for women, so he was criticized. Okay, we then move on to Paris 1900 and St. Louis 1904. Okay, we finally had some women taking part at the games. Okay, and there were loads of other issues that the games were subsumed into the World Fairs, and they ended up taking months to last. And some of the winners of the competition weren't even aware they were a champion because they'd lost interest. It went on too long. So basically, what had happened, the USA were trying to display their wealth to visitors from across the world. So while we should be celebrating American culture, they took it a little bit too far in the St. Louis Games. So still a few issues there. We move on to London, 1908, and a few issues here. Finland didn't want to be represented under the Russian flag. Sweden vacated the stadium, realizing the colours of their country were not displayed. Okay, and then the American flag bearer, Ralph Rose, he said, "Our flag dips to no earthly king." So in front of King Edward, they didn't dip the flag. So we were making progress, but there were still little niggles towards de Coubertin's vision. Okay, and then came Stockholm 1912, also known as the Swedish masterpiece. So we got up to 28 nations, which is a big rise in comparison to 1896. Much more competitors. We finally had women, albeit it was only 48, clearly not enough, but steps in the right direction. But still, he's addressed his original issues. That he didn't have women in the games, but obviously he still has a lot of work to go. That's still not equality there. But they'd claimed that this was the Swedish masterpiece. The games, there were medals awarded for 5 categories: art, music, etc. And then these practices continued until London 1948. And then de Coubertin had also won gold for a poem, where he said, "Oh, sport, you are peace." So he was reiterating that the Olympics was now starting to achieve its aims and create this Olympic spirit, if you like. We'll talk about how the Olympics went on from there. Lots more issues, but this was the first one where he felt more of the aims were being met in them original modern day Olympics. So that's just a quick brief history of the first few games and how de Coubertin was judged. Okay, but what else we need to look at in the syllabus is this supreme mental and physical challenge. Like, what are the Olympic Games supposed to be about from a sporting perspective? So it's about striving for excellence in your discipline, in your sport. And when you go to this event, you'll be against the very best in the world from other nations. So you're truly going to find out who is the fastest 100-meter runner. Okay? It was about achieving goals and giving one's best. This is sometimes known now as a personal best. So if you're achieving a PB, obviously we track times, we track heights, we track distances. Okay? You'll know if you've given one's best, if you've beat a PB. It's about respecting each other and the environment and the rules of the competition. Respect the rules of the game. And with all of that, you'll have a combination of a strong body because you're pushing it to its limits. You'll have a strong will. You're always focusing on trying to achieve the next goal, and mind. Okay? So that's what this concept was about, the supreme mental and physical challenge. We then had fair play ideals. Now, we've covered this in a little bit in sportsmanship and gamesmanship, but the Olympics had its own fair play ideals. How could an athlete conform to them? How could an athlete say they are conforming to the fair play ideals? One, again, abide by the rules of the competition. Don't don't break the rules. Don't even bend the rules. No gamesmanship. Only good sportsmanship is wanted at the Olympics. Okay? Respect for all. That includes performers, spectators, officials, organizing committees. Just show respect. Be modest in victory. Shake hands. Okay? And be generous in defeat. Don't go off in a huff. Go and congratulate the winners. So there's some ways that you can conform, or the athletes can conform to the fair play ideals of the Olympics. And if we remember back to the aim, fair play is one of them in the original aim of the Olympics. So back to as a social force, we're going to look at an exam question. Discuss the significance of the modern Olympic Games as a social force. So when we get discuss or evaluate, we've got to be looking at positives and negatives. Okay? So what significance does the modern Olympic Games have as a social force? Well, athletes from all around the world, different nations, they compete irrespective of colour, race, and political belief. Okay, now that again will go back into the history, but that is the idea, and that is one of the positives. Athletes do compete with each other of different colours and races. Promotion of international understanding. We have cultural diversity. This can be done when the Olympics is hosted in different cities. It gives the general public and athletes to celebrate that culture and improve their knowledge of other cultures. As we've mentioned, we have the supreme physical and mental challenge. You're going against the best in the world. Fair play. It puts on in the public eye what sportsmanship really is. You promote peace and harmony, that the fact that countries can gather together and compete in sport. And it encourages mass participation in sport because all of the public watching might want to take up that sport. However, we have some negatives. Now, these negatives we'll cover in more detail as we go through the unit. Okay, so we have rumours of widespread drug taking, doping, etc. Win at all cost ethics. That's your cheating, your gamesmanship. Okay, modifying equipment. Terrorist infiltration, going back to the tragedy in Munich. Okay, so terrorists will use the Olympics as a target because they know everyone will be watching and they'll get their message across and they'll get the attention they're craving. Government interference for the country's own ends, a bit like in the St. Louis we've mentioned, America were trying to display their wealth as a country. Athletes being used as pawns for their governments, so governments deciding they're going to boycott an Olympics, which can be unfair to an athlete if they've been training for that one moment, which only comes around every 4 years. And host country human rights issues, this will link to Beijing, and the IOC got criticised for picking them to host the 2008 Olympics due to human rights issues in the country. So the Olympics does come with negatives, and what the IOC's job is, which we'll cover also, is reducing these negatives. Okay,